people can be good to you at some point in your life, and you have to really appreciate that about them when that happens. And also, you have to learn that when they are not good to you anymore, you have to walk away from them. You have to learn to walk away from them. Tenen sicho besi move from where we were staying to where we are currently staying. We bought a house, and sitting in indlu. I didn't know anyone in the area. It was a new area, a new development area. And then I had a son. At the time, he was almost 2, and then I needed a daycare for him. So I was going around, asking around, and people didn't know anything. And I checked online, and then I couldn't like get something concrete or something closer to us. But then Kukolekao, which is very close to us, I heard that there's a creche there, but every time I went there, it was empty. But then this one day, I would go even on Sundays, but then I would go around 12, and then already it's empty. And I didn't quite get that because I assumed on a Sunday there would be people. But then I decided, no, what, I'm just going to walk in on a Monday morning because I can't get the details online or anything. And I didn't see any like boards outside where I could like maybe call or maybe email, WhatsApp, whatever. I walked in the morning, and my son wasn't feeling quite all right because he had a runny tummy because he was teething, and he had been like that for a couple of days. I took him to the doctor. They gave him something, and they gave him some injections as well, but he was slightly better than what he was. So I wasn't working the first few days, but then this day, it was a Monday, I was working, and I thought, let me just walk in and see what they say. I walked in and I spoke with the lady, the principal of the creche, and I told her, and another thing, I didn't have money. I told her, I don't have money now to register the child, but I will get paid on Friday, which is we're on a Monday. I will get paid on Friday, and I will pay the money for the week, and I'll pay the month in advance for the following month when I get paid. And she was like, I'm sure it shouldn't be a problem, but let me speak to my son. He's the owner of the business. Let me speak to my son and see what he says. Spoke to his son, and his son was like, no, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. We can take your son in. They took him without any money. I was so grateful. And they, like, the lady kept sending me pictures, videos. He was happy, but he still had a runny tummy. And he was happy because there's a boy that also stays in this establishment. The boy is 15. At the time, the boy was 13 years old. I think now he's about 16. So the boy was 13 years old at the time, and my son was about 2 years old. The lady that is the principal of the creche has a son, and the son is about 40 years old, but he still is living with his mother. It was all good and well. I then was invited to the church by this lady, and I found a home in the church. I liked the way they do things. They're on time. I liked the fellowship. The worship was like in English and Afrikaans. I caught on the songs which were in Afrikaans. I don't speak Afrikaans, but I can understand some of it. But I was enjoying it because it was songs that you could catch, and then you can sing, and then you can ask someone to translate for you, and then they would translate and all of that. I enjoyed it, and I went into like the church, and I became family to the church. And then I joined all the groups. I was an usher there. I was in the ushers group, all the groups, fundraising groups, and everything. It was all good and well, and I felt like a family member in there, and I trusted them. But then what happened was, because I was staying with my son only, because my husband would travel, like most of the time he would come back maybe after a month or after 2 weeks. It would depend on the job that he was doing. So he would travel a lot inside the country, outside the country. And I was mostly alone with the baby. So as a person that I am, I like to keep fit. I like to make sure that even though I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I still do the things that I like to do. We have body goals, we have fitness goals, and we have health goals that we want to achieve. So what happened was I would come back from work, go straight to the gym, and then go pick him up. And I would pick him up around 6. But then it happened that I picked him up, excuse me, I picked him up around 6, but this time when I pulled over by the gate, I normally pulled over by the gate. I wouldn't go into a parking or something. I'd pull over by the gate because it was normally quick. It's in and out. I'd pick up his stuff and pick him up and leave. But this time, when I pulled over, he came running through the passage, and then he saw me. Like, when someone was running, he saw me, and then he stood a while, and then he ran to me. So I didn't ask, I just picked him up, and then on one hand, and then on the other, I went inside and I took his bags. The lady was there, and I said bye. I don't normally say a lot. I said bye, and then I put him inside the back seat in the car. But then when I put him inside the back seat, like as I was about to start the car, and then we leave, and he says something. He says, "Mommy," because I asked him casually, how was your day? And then I'm strapping myself to start the car, and then he said, "My day was not good." What happened? He says, this boy, the 15-year-old at the time, the 15-year-old boy, he said we must go and play closer to the. We must go and play by where the dog house is, and then we went and played there. And then when we got there, he said, he said, I can't remember how he phrased it. I think he said, I must lick his thing, but my son can't say, he can't bite his tongue. He said, I must lick his ting. I'm like, what do you mean lick his ting? He said, I must lick his private part. And then I was so shocked, and I'm like, okay, baby, can you show me what you're saying? Can you show me how this boy did this thing, and tell me again? And then he said, Mommy, he said I must lick his thing. And then he like unstrapped his like button, and then he did off his trousers to show me how he did. And then I asked him, and then what did you say? And then he said, I said no. And then I asked him, oh, then what did he say? And then he said he grabbed my head, and then he tried to force me to. And then what happened? And then I ran. That's when I ran. And then what happened? Did you tell the lady? And he said, no, I ran. When I ran, then I saw you. Then I ran to you. That's when I saw you. And then I was like, I didn't know what to say. But immediately I picked him up and I said, let's go inside. Because we were still outside. I hadn't like driven off. Still outside. And then I went inside, and then I said, ma'am, my boy told me something very disturbing. I'd like him to tell you again what he said. And I turned to him, and I'm like, baby, tell the auntie what you told me just now. And then he narrated the story again. And then the auntie started shouting. It's like, what did you tell me? I'm like, no, don't shout at him. And then he's like, why did you tell me? And then my boy explained. He said he was running to tell the auntie, but now he didn't, because he saw me. Then he instead ran to me. And then she asked him again, what happened? And then she called the boy. The boy came, and then I asked the boy, my son says you did this. And then he hesitated, and then he said, he's lying. And then the aunt is like, this boy has never done something like this, blah blah blah. Why are you lying? He's asking my son, why are you lying? And at the time my son was almost 4 years old. I think he just turned 4 years old, and he was screaming. I'm like, please don't shout him. That's what he said. And then he's like, this other boy that stays with him, he's never done something like this, blah blah blah. And then I didn't know what to say further, and then I just said, okay, then bye. And then I left.